All right, everybody. Welcome back to Marauder Mondays. It is definitely a special, I guess you would call it an episode or just another live stream tonight. Today we have PrepperNow here with us, and I am very excited about it because if you don't know PrepperNow, he is very insightful when it comes to what's going on in the world these days and has a lot of good analysis based on current events. And if you're not familiar with his channel, I definitely recommend it because it's a good place to kind of get your thought process moving and to get a different perspective as to what's going on in the world. So
Thank you.
Thank you for showing up, sir. And why don't you just kind of introduce yourself a little bit and kind of let everybody know what the deal is?
Well, I am PrepperNow. I'm dealing with a light right now, but I think we're good there. Whereas we were kind of greeting before, and of course the light went up. Better now than So I'm in my car. I just get better reception here. But yeah, I've been a prepper for about 10 years. I keep my identity kind of hidden, and the reason why is because we are in a cancel culture, kind of area. I am an educator. And there's a lot of people that would love to cancel people that do not have a mainstream kind of mentality. And so, I just kind of keep my identity. So that's why I've got the mask and everything and why you never see me. I would love to see a day where I could actually show myself, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, there's just, it's funny. My first month on YouTube, you can see me I've taken down all the videos, but I was actually out there, and then I got this feeling that things are going to go in kind of a really bad way. And I said, you know what? I don't want my identity out there. I'm worried. And I talked to my wife. I almost took down my channel completely. And she said, basically for what I do, you cannot teach about free speech and not feel like you have the ability to at least utilize it, but just kind of hide your identity. And so I started to do that. And that was about June of 2020. And here we are, 14 months later, and I am very lucky to be asked by you to come in and speak and do a powwow with you about all this, because it's just, first of all, I highly respect what you're doing, and I don't know, I think you have an excellent presentation style, and because of that, I think you give really good measured information that people, there's a lot of people out there that are going to go for the clickbait and all that, and we really need a measured kind of look that isn't one way or the other and is kind of trying to see the whole picture. And I think you do a good job of that.
Well, I appreciate that. And, like I said, when I introduced you, I do feel that you bring some really good analysis and opinion to the table, especially revolving around current events. And it is unfortunate that we're currently in an era of our country where, someone with the knowledge and the skill set that you have isn't able to reveal themselves due to the fact that there's a possibility of being canceled, basically,
Yeah.
And that is, I think that's something that keeps a lot of people from operating on platforms like YouTube. And I do think that that's really unfortunate because I think if there was more of us out there spreading the word and trying to get the message out, that we'd be more successful in what it is we're trying to accomplish,
I agree.
So, Prepper now, when it comes to what's happening in our world right now with everything that's going on, one of the reasons why I was glad to bring you on is because I always think that you bring, like a nice even tempered opinion to what, is happening out there in the world. And I wanted your thoughts, with what we're seeing happening in places like France right now, where the entire population is coming together to basically say that they're against certain, protocols and procedures that are being put into place right now. What reaction do you expect from that? And from watching that entire situation start to unfold, is that something we should expect to see here? Or is this a different animal now at this point when you compare Europe and the United States?
Okay, so let's start with, I saw a video today from Twitter that had cops literally going through a cafe, seeing people's jab status, okay? And it was kind of concerning to see, especially with France's history of where they came from with, with Vichy France and all that, I don't know. The French are the ultimate revolutionaries. They were the very first. They kind of, they just, I don't know. The French Revolution is something I used to teach, and it is an interesting thing. And to see where they are now, I don't think we get a lot of really good information. And the reason why is because of where the mainstream media is. So I don't think people have a proper understanding of the scope and how many people are going out there. And the French have been, kind of fighting against a lot of this stuff in different kind of areas of politics with the yellow vest movement for quite some time. And so now, of course, it's transformed into this whole, passport thing. And it's just strange because, they'll go through and they'll do stuff, and then you'll look back and they had everything basically set up for it to when they implement it, they'll be able to put it in. And it just feels like everything has kind of been gamed out already. And they're basically have, a bunch of eggheads and understand where things are going, where the populace will be, where the pockets of unrest are. And so they can kind of front run it and handle it. And I think that's part of the problem. Now, as it stands for like, where will America go? America's a much bigger country than France. And, the politics are very different all over. I mean, you've basically got 50 different countries with all the different states. Texas will be very different than Maryland or California or Illinois. And so how the people react and what the different states do, like, people are saying, oh, there's going to be a national lockdown. Well, as it stands, you can't really do that because of the way the, federalism works. But, could the national government try to do something like that? Absolutely. Especially after seeing the recent moratorium and what they did. They basically just shirked what the Supreme Court said. So they're obviously not really listening or trying to do what has been acceptable as a government in the past. And so I think that what they're doing is it's almost like they're just trying to keep poking at us to see what the response will be. And I think the problem is that the people that they're poking at are very decentralized. They're all, preppers are and conservatives or whatever you want to call them, people that are against this stuff. We're decentralized. We don't want to be messed with. I say all the time, I just want to be left alone. I just want to have my family and to be able to just kind of, do my thing and just be left alone. I don't want any part of this. But the problem is they keep doing everything they can to make it so it affects everyone. And so I don't think they're going to stop. And I think they're going to push it as far as they can. And at some point, people are going to start to push back. But my fear is that it's going to be really ragtag. And because of that, they're going to use that as all they need to like put in like this. Today, there's a big thing on the NFA, the National Firearms Act. And they want to basically make it so if you put a magazine into a rifle, it's now covered under that. So I think they're going to use everything they can to push us. And then if there's any kind of a reaction, they can take that and they can use it against us.
No, that makes sense. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of probing in the sense of, what people will or will not comply with over this past year. And, one of the things that I've tried to consider is, with what's happening in France right now with the mass protests and everything else, and you compare it to what happened back in 2000 for the UK, which were when they were protesting the oil price increases that was going to shut down, small businesses and ruin people's livelihoods. Back then, the people came together and shut down freeways and did what they had to do and actually got some results. Here, we're in a situation where a lot of people are definitely against this whole scenario, and yet they're still not getting the results that they're hoping for. And I feel like we've kind of crossed the threshold where our opinion or how the populace feels is no longer of a concern,
I agree. I really feel that it's almost like I think I do videos for Rumble and BitChute as well, where I can, of course, say things differently. And mine today was called The Ruling Class, and it very much touches on that, how it just feels like they're not really concerned about representative government anymore. And, it almost feels like 2022 as an election cycle isn't even going to really happen or even cared about, because they're just going to keep twisting everything until they can. And they're not really concerned about it because I don't think they see things progressing to the point where if it happens at all, it's even going to matter. I mean, I was very political in 2020 in the summer. I have a political science degree, and so I'm very much invested in all that kind of stuff. And now I look back at it and I feel like a fool. I really do. I'm
right?
like, I really feel like, I always hear the people say, oh, the left-right paradigm, yada, yada, yada. And I look at it now, I'm like, those people were absolutely correct. It is literally a clown show. And now you throw on the fact that these people are acting as if representative government doesn't even matter anymore. I mean, I have had the reality check of all reality checks, and I'm aggravated because I do, like, this is something that I educate people on, and I almost feel hypocritical because I'm sitting there telling them about all these things, and these institutions that I were brought up to believe in don't really feel like they're there anymore. And if they are, they're basically shells of themselves. And
Yeah.
so you feel like you don't have a recourse. You feel like you don't have the ability to get someone in office that is going to represent your political ideals and stuff. And so you're just kind of like along for the ride. And then you see like this Chipman guy being put in. He would have never been approved 10 years ago. And now he's like basically on the precipice, and all these other things that are going on that 5-10 years ago. So you kind of look at it and you're like, clearly the ballot box isn't something I can rely upon anymore. So where do I go? And I think a lot of people are searching for that. And so, I kind of took up the I guess the soapbox with YouTube. And so, but I'm like many people, I don't know where all this is going. I don't see anything positive at the end of it. And so because of that, I'm really just kind of prepping and trying to get everything I can in my house in order, because every avenue I see, every logical path that I see going forward for this country and for me and my family has a lot of really negative aspects to it. And so it just kind of makes, the only thing I can do is like go to Aldi and spend another $80 on getting everything I need to like finish up the preps or whatever it is, or get the solar system going or whatever. And now it's cool because the family is all basically on board, because I live in outside of DC in a suburb, but the bug out farm is in a very rural part, about an hour away or so. And everything we're doing is like kind of getting ready for this uncertain future. We're making sure the well waters work. We're getting, we have 3 different generators now. We've got all these things, and everybody feels it. Everybody feels it. Everybody's like, something negative is coming. I don't really have control over it. And so the only thing I can do is prep. So.
And that's definitely a good option and a good place to start. Obviously, it's one of the things that gives you the most control and power over your own personal situation. Being able to be self-sufficient and self-reliant and not worrying about what's happening on the outside is a huge level of freedom that we're all trying to accomplish. I do want to jump into the chat real quick. There's a couple things that came through that I just want to address really quickly. First off, I want to say thank you, I believe, to Mr. Wrong Doing It Right. Now, you sent a super chat, and I understand that you're trying to get your message across, but I literally don't know what you mean by talking about builders using rotten wood. I don't believe that was me, because I don't think I've said that in any video at all. So I apologize if you've confused me with someone else, but I don't think it was me. And if it was, I mean, send me a link to the video that I say it in, but I really don't think it was me. So I apologize for upsetting you, but I really don't think I did that. I really don't, because I'm pretty sure I would remember that. And then let's see here. Just want to go down to a couple others. Thank you, Quinn the Q. You have a deep military family. Talk to the actual grunts, and they're not going to take their dads and brothers and friends' ARs. Totally get that, and I honestly want to fully believe that that's how the majority of our military is. But I also am aware that our government has more than the capacity to bring in foreign help if they ever decide they need to do something that they know that their own people aren't willing to do. And I think that's pretty straightforward at this point of like what entities or groups that might be. Let's see here. All right. And then I do want you guys to just be aware that PrepperNow, in case you just recently joined, he already kind of explained why he's wearing a mask. But something that's really big and important in the prepper community is OPSEC. And a lot of people preach OPSEC and not letting people know what you have or what you do or where you are or who you are. So I just want you to be aware that some people are willing to come out and try to get good information, but they're not willing to sacrifice their OPSEC in order to do so. I'm somebody who's decided that I'm not concerned as much about my OPSEC as I am the ability to, communicate with you guys directly. But my circumstances are different than somebody like PrepperNow's. And I do know him more personally than any of you might know him, just from being able to have conversations behind the scenes. And I am understanding as to why he would want to hide his identity. So I'm just trying to give you guys some insight as to why, he's doing what he's doing. And then, Kay Craig, thank you so much. Much love to Magic and PrepperNow, two of the best. We appreciate your awesome content. I appreciate that. Now, there's a couple other things too that I wanted to touch base on here. Prairie Man said, look at Australia. 16% of the people have been, medicated, and the military is coming to enforce it at this point. And that's true. Sydney, Australia is definitely having military patrols, making sure that guidelines are being enforced. And DIY Dad also said it's going to take massive non-compliance from everyone in order to make a dent. And the issue is that at this point, I don't even know if it's the compliance or the non-compliance that's part of the game plan. I think it's the division that's really getting it out there. And they're pushing it hard to the point now where it's pretty obvious to see that there's going to be one large demographic of people who's going to be the problem at some point, and there's going to be some way they're going to address that. I guarantee it. And I think we've all seen a lot of other things. PrepperNow, I do think that there's some echo coming in over on your side. Just to be aware of. I don't know if there's a way for you to cancel that out or not.
I don't know. Am I echoing now?
No, not now. You're not.
Okay. It might have been with the way I positioned the phone, or my phone.
Okay.
So I had it kind of resting up on my steering wheel. So
I know there's noise canceling built into StreamYard, but I also know that if you don't have headphones or something, it can be kind of difficult sometimes.
Okay.
Let's see. And then what I can do too is mute you while you're not talking, just to make it easier for you. So, let's see here. So I do appreciate everyone being here. This is definitely, Marauder Monday. We're always here to have a good time and have good conversations. And then just talking about Marauders in general. I mean, I think that as Americans and as people who are, seeing the way things are going, is it pretty obvious that the people who are going to eventually be in those groups at an SHTF, post scenario are the same ones who are going to use those reporting programs that are being put out there right now to let people know who's not doing what?
I think I draw parallels to, is what I do. I always go back to what's happened before. And I call it large Asian nation. People know what I'm talking about when I call that, because
whenever I know it sounds like a shampoo or something,
Yeah, exactly. So whenever you mention that country's name, bad things start to happen. So I just called them a large Asian nation. So in the 1960s, they had a cultural revolution. And if you know anything about it, I've actually taken a lot of courses on it. I was very fascinated by it. It was literally... everybody was ratting everybody out. Students were ratting out, teachers, and families were being ratted out by children. And, there was the Red Guards, and they're basically these red book carrying, people that followed the founder of Large Asian Nation in its current form. And I see that kind of a snitching society starting to evolve. And with the current way that we are, and this addresses the mask thing, the current way that we are with like technology and all that, people can, put it out there anonymously. And if you were to get any kind of incentive to do that, I could see people starting to do that if there was a real push that the people that have not made the choice to take a certain medical intervention, if they're the ones that are seen as the scapegoat, as it seems like they're currently trying to do, I could see people partaking of that and doing whatever they can, especially if there's any kind of an economic issue. If people are broke or whatever, they're going to do things to make money. And if going out and reporting people that are supposedly, not following what the state advises, I could totally see that. And as things get worse and more, you're seeing this on Twitter. I don't go to Twitter, with the exception of finding like news articles. I'll get stuff sent to me. And Twitter is like the worst of the worst, but it really gives you an idea of where that mentality comes from and how it's starting to evolve into that. Because I think they call it like bird watch or whatever, where people are watching and trying to get people that they call quote unquote extremists or whatever. Well, the problem is, what is the definition of an extremist? You know, if you are a Christian and you don't believe in a certain lifestyle, does that make you an extremist? You know, it's just, I don't know. It's very gray area right now, and it's evolving into more of a fascist, authoritarian kind of mentality. And the people that get more into this really kind of take it up and take it into a religious kind of
dogma
experience, I guess. It's the only way. Like, I read a book by Eric Hoffer called True Believer, and it's about this kind of thing. People, when they get swept up into a political movement, they will lay everything down for it, and whatever the leader says, this cult of personality, they will full force go into it. And if that means going out and seeking them out and throwing them into the street or doing something like Crystal Knox, which is an example of that, it will happen.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, I think when it comes to this stuff, that's how they're going to operate. It's not going to be some overreaching, large, you know, iron fist of the federal government that comes down. It's going to be collaborators from within your community that's going to be the you know, catalyst to all of this. And that's how a lot of these things have happened throughout history. But that's the only way to actually accomplish anything with as large of a scale as they need to at this point. And I do feel that there's incentives, and that's what they do. They incentivize people, and they also, you know, offer protection, much like the mafia would if you're operating a business in their territory, right? You got to pay for protection because, you know, you're not safe. And that's basically what we're looking at in many ways if things keep progressing in the direction they're going to. So, you know, I want to touch base. I like to get back in the comments every so often. People have great things to put in there. They also have questions, and they have just, you know, things to kind of touch base on. So looks like they're under new mandates over here back in Montgomery County, Maryland. That's from We Are Change MD. And that's happening all over the country. New mandates are being put out there, and people are definitely struggling this time around to adapt to those changes. You know, I mean, originally a lot of people were kind of just like testing the water and saying, okay, we'll give this a shot because it's unknown territory. But we've gotten to the point now where people are basically willing to just say no and see what happens rather than just comply from the get-go. So we'll see how all these new mandates that are coming out around the country actually go. But things are, I don't know, things are definitely looking a little bit interesting this time around. There's a lot more talk about mandates and requirements than there were before. And I do know back, you know, in 2020, there was the concept of fines on the table, especially for businesses. If businesses didn't operate under the guidelines or restrictions, yeah, I mean, were there police going around and enforcing these fines? In many areas, probably not, but I would assume in some of the larger metropolitan areas, it was happening quite a bit. Let's see here. Diabetic Prepper says, I got a ton of trolls. That's how you know you're doing something right. Don't worry. It's a good place to be. Let's see. Okay, I see that Gray Man Prepping's in the house, and I do want to say tomorrow night I'll actually be over on Gray Man Prepping's channel doing a live stream with him on his channel. So if you guys don't know Gray Man already, go check him out and make sure you subscribe so that you get the notification for tomorrow's live stream. But that should be a good conversation. You know, we've been kind of chatting back and forth about getting something set up here for a while now, and I'm glad I can finally, you know, allocate that time and make it happen. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And I know he's talking about that emergency broadcast test coming up on the 11th, which is in 2 days. And just so everybody's aware of that, there isn't any reason to have any kind of anxiety about the test itself or anything like that. Am I always at least somewhat skeptical or at least suspicious of any tests that go on out there? Of course I am, because it feels like any major event that's happened over the last 20 years coincided with drills or tests of some kind. But the real information was more about what it is they're testing and why. And I did put out a video recently about that just to kind of give you a heads up as to what they're capable of and whether or not your phones are even set up to be able to utilize those tests. So if you haven't actually seen that video and you're interested in what's happening that day, maybe that's something good to check out. And let's see here. I know that there's a few more here. Jeffrey Smiler, has anyone here dated a homeless person? No, just my wife at one point in time, but that's for a different story, okay? All right, let's see here. Okay, so going back to just kind of talking about what's going on out there. I mean, we were just kind of chatting about these collaborators and the Marauder types, and we are getting that feedback echo now again. I'm just going to go ahead and mute you real quick, and then I'll ask you a question. Oh, you got it. Okay, perfect. So with what we're seeing happening in Europe and things like what are happening in France, and this is a conversation that comes up quite a bit, and it's something that I think is worth discussing, but do you feel that the amount of sway that the public has over their leaders is diminished because of the fact that they don't have something like the Second Amendment?
I mean, the Second Amendment is the ultimate equalizer, you know? I mean, I was reading the whole story about Chipman today, and there's obviously a push to get that away. I mean, look at what they're being able to get away with in the UK and in France and in Australia. These are all Western societies that have given up their ability to defend themselves through firearms. And, you know, I mean, people that think that, you know, giving it up or is going to somehow decrease crime. I was actually, when I went into my degree, I had to debate all this stuff. And so it was basically setting me up to become a lawyer. I didn't become a lawyer, thank God. But I had to debate all this stuff. And I was very much against the ability of people to own firearms unless there was heavy kind of regulation. I was quite liberal when I went into my degree. And after reading books and getting like proper information that wasn't really seen through the lens of the mainstream media, I started to figure some things out. And one of the things I figured out about the Second Amendment is the fact that crime will not cease to exist if you take away the tools. People do bad things. An implement is an implement. It needs a person to act upon it to make a bad thing happen. You could look at what happened in Nice, France. A guy took a truck and took out 100 people or something like that, however many years ago. It was like 8 or 10 years ago.
Yep.
Bad things can happen. It doesn't really need to have like a weapon. And I think as Americans, one of the reasons why we still have a modicum of people listening to what we have to say is that there are people out there that know that they have the right to protect themselves. That is a God-given right. And if that were to ever be taken away or severely curtailed or hindered or whatever it may look like, I think everybody knows where things would go from there. And as, again, drawing back on the history aspect, look at what happened in Russia. Look at what happened in Germany. Look what happened in a large Asian nation. Look at what happened all across the board. All of these societies, one of the first steps is taking away their ability to defend themselves. And at that point, if you can't defend yourself, then the state can do whatever it wants. And that is the last, threshold of keeping them at bay before they take the mask off, proverbially, and go for all the marbles, whatever that may look like. So we can never give up our Second Amendment. And if you look at like stats and stuff, people that die from firearms isn't even in the top 10. I did a video a couple of days ago called Iatrogenesis. It is the third leading cause of death, or actually one of the top 3, and it's death by medical miscalculation or misuse or medication or whatever. Firearms isn't even in the top 10. So the fact that there's such a push to take away people's weapons tells me everything I need to know. It's not that big of a societal problem if you look at the grand scheme of things. So why is there such a push to make people want to give up their weapons? Well, it's going to take away our ability to defend ourselves. And at that point, they'll be able to do whatever they want, put anything they want into place. And if we don't have the Second Amendment, then we're basically at their mercy.
Well, and I think we see that happening in places like France right now, where people are not really making much progress, even though they're out there and doing what they're trying to do, which is make their voices heard and make the leadership understand that they're not on board with the new directives. But without that ability to move the ball forward in a certain way, I don't think there's much repercussion for the leadership to just disagree and basically move on without any kind of recourse. And I think that's what, a big problem is with what's happening right now around the world. And then, of course, those exact situations are going to be utilized as justification for what we have happening here. So, and especially what we saw last year was that once somebody does it, it's okay to just start doing it as well wherever you are. And we saw it here just in the United States when it came to states like California and New York, and it just kind of snowballed from there, from state to state, until finally it got the entire country involved. And I do think that, at least in our community here, there's obviously a lot of Second Amendment advocates and a lot of people who are very adamant about making sure that we're able to protect ourselves and take care of ourselves in a way that we see fit. But I do think that there's some basic understanding that it's not just for self-defense. It also has a level of, I don't know how else to say it, maybe a level of negotiating power behind it as well. Let's see. Hey, Uncle Grandpa Prepper, good to see you. Uncle Grandpa, Urban Grandpa. I like that. That was a good Freudian slip. And then I do want to say there's some other good things here in the comments, so I just want to kind of touch base with these really quickly. All right, so I do want to ask, if you guys have questions, make sure you leave them, and you can tag me or tag PrepperNow and just kind of like make sure that we see them in some way or another. But more than happy to address questions here. There's a lot of really good information here in the comments, not just in the live stream itself, because the community here is super. I don't know what the word is. It's just super supportive of each other, and it seems like everyone always has a answer for somebody looking for a solution. And it might not be the answer you were hoping for, but everybody's at least willing to give their opinion, and I think that's a good thing for us all to do. Whether or not we agree doesn't matter. The fact that we have the ability to speak freely is very important. Let's see here. Sig Frank, good to see you. I've seen some of the old time supporters around, as well as many newcomers. So I do appreciate y'all being here. We got a lot of people, loving and hating on 300 Blackout. Totally understandable. I think if I had to choose one, because they're asking between that and 762 by 39, I guess we're going to talk. I guess I'm going 762 by 39 just because of availability and price. So just trying to throw that out there and probably piss off a lot of people. All right. So let's see. A gate Beowulf. No safe havens here. It seems that we will soon lose the freedom to travel and enter public facilities without at least being registered. Papers, please, is not just a game anymore. And that is obviously the concern of a lot of Americans right now. It's obviously the concern of the French people right now and what they're protesting and why they're out in the streets. And I think that we can see that that's just going to keep morphing into more and more compliance necessity. And like I said recently, it's not necessarily because the federal government's going to come down and make sure everybody has everything that they need in order to be compliant. It's because private entities and corporations are going to take the initial steps to basically say, we're willing to lose your business or your labor if you're not willing to comply with our guidelines. And that is kind of where we're heading, even more so than things coming from directly from the federal government. And, PrepperNow, I do want to ask, so when it comes to these private entities, I mean, are we going to see it all roll out simultaneously? Do you think that they're waiting on the approval? Is it going to be subsidized? Is there federal or, tax incentive to allowing some of these restrictions to be put out there? A lot of people are basically hoping that they can, I guess, find some defense in the fact that you could sue your company based on any kind of malpractice involved with some of these guidelines, or that you could, sue for your rights or whatever it might be. But I don't know if that's going to have some kind of protections put into place because of the federal government trying to push this so hard. So just what are your thoughts on that? And what do you think businesses are going to do to try to, push those mandates without actually accepting any liability?
I've mixed feelings about this, and my wife is a healthcare provider. She works for a pretty large company. They haven't mandated or even made mention of anything like that. Her plan, of course, is to move on and do something else if she has to, but we haven't had to come to that bridge yet, thank God. For what I do, they could potentially try to to mandate it. But I think the problem is the decentralization. As much as it's against people on the conservative side, it's also very tough to put into on this kind of a side of like a corporate structure, because they're going to be all over the place. I was watching a video today about Dave Ramsey. I'm very much into paying off debt. It's from a month ago, and I put it onto my Subscribe Star. But he basically is talking to a nurse who was going to have to quit his job because they wanted him to get it. He didn't want to get it. And Dave was kind of talking afterwards, and he's very common sense. He's very Christian. And he basically just said that these corporate entities are just trying to virtue signal, essentially. And because of that, they're going to lose a lot of really great talent, and people are going to start to walk away. So I think in the early stages, it's going to kind of resemble that. And it's going to be tough to make it so they can mandate it across the board unless some kind of a new strain were to come along that really did have some nasty features to it. So I think in the next 6 months, it's going to kind of be based on what state you're in, what kind of job you're in. And, I think on that note, if you are not into it, I watched your last video. What you said was great. It's not that I want people to do it. It's not that I want people to not do it. I want people to have the ability to make their own decision. Okay, that's the core of America right there, self-reliance and self-determination. And so I think in the next 6 months or whatever, it's going to be really tough to make that happen unless something kind of really nasty were to come along and really start to tear through the public. At that point, I really do think it will be kind of, corporation to corporation. I don't think they have the legislative ability to do it. You're already seeing pushback on a national and a state level. If you're in California or New York, you'll have a lot more problems than, say, Texas or South Carolina. So I think it'll be kind of ragtag in the beginning. But if there is something that starts in all these doomsday scenario that people have been putting out there, not just, people on, conspiracy.com or something like that. These are people with actual medical backing and understand the science and everything. If what some of these people are saying, their worst case scenarios, you could see a potential mandate, but we haven't gotten to that bridge quite yet.
Well, and I am curious to kind of see how some of this plays out, because obviously doing things like organized boycotts and stuff like that, they have their place, but they lose their effectiveness over time, because generally the people we're talking about organizing in that way are people with responsibilities and jobs and everything else that they actually, have an obligation to. But what I will say is that it'll be interesting to see if capitalism, of all things, which is still where our country is and what we do and how we operate, if that can actually solve some of these problems for us. And when I say that, what I mean is, if enough companies go through and start putting out these mandates and denying service and denying products and denying labor to people based on some sort of status, what companies are going to capitalize on the fact that they might be the only one who does it? Right. And it kind of, one thing, and just to not ruin your OPSEC here, but PrepperNow and I share something in common. We both worked in the restaurant industry before. And one thing I can tell you is that the restaurant industry only stays in business because they don't drug test. And it's 100% true, though. They don't drug test, and it's the only way they can get cooks to come sign up and work 8 hours, super hard shifts in extreme heat, cleaning and doing a lot of work that nobody else wants to do, because at the end of the day, nobody's checking whether or not they're having too much fun. And I have a feeling that, just like the restaurant business, other companies and other entities at some point might say, all these, let's throw out there like airlines. All these airlines are requiring all these restrictions and guidelines to operate. Of course, this is federally regulated, so that might not apply the same way. But if you're the airline that has the least amount of restrictions, are you going to find yourself with more tickets sold at the end of the day? And then if that's the case, does that then equate to other airlines following suit? Because obviously the pursuit of, more sales and more income is more important than following guidelines of some kind. And I do hope that maybe we can see some of that solution unfold at some point here. I don't have a reason to believe it will right away, but I think at some point, some other businesses will say, you know what, we're just not doing that now. And we'll see what happens. If they're the only people with employees and the only people making sales and the only people out of the red at that time, you can expect a lot of other companies to follow suit. But I think we have to get to that point before that happens, you know?
I agree. You know, a lot of this, I think, is a concerted effort to basically just destabilize America. America is the last bastion of like true human freedom, I think. And, you know, not to sound like a postcard or, you know, some kind of a tourist thing to come here or whatever. Americans just have a sense of freedom that a lot of other places don't. And I think that there are a lot of nefarious entities out there that want to do nasty things. And the best way to accomplish it on, say, a global scale is to take America out by the knees. And so there's part of me that almost thinks that they're not so much concerned about getting some kind of a across the board mandate in one way or the other. It's more of just like a destabilization over many years so they can keep chipping away and kind of doing a death by 1,000 cuts. And so that's my biggest fear, because we are a large country, and because of that, you can go in and make, you know, New York and California, which used to be one larger economies, if you can take them out through all of these mandates and stuff, whereas you can't take out of Texas, you can't take out Idaho or whatever. All of that is all going to still work its negative effects on the economy as a whole, take us out and make it so another country, say, I don't know, one that's really large and in Asia, can come in and kind of take over. Because I think there's supernatural or national people. There's people that don't really have a hold on to what country they're from. And they kind of see the globe as this big chessboard. And I think a lot of these people, these would be the people that have a lot of money. You can buy a yacht that is able to have a smaller yacht tend to it, which, you know, this guy just went into space. These people are doing this stuff because they're not really worried about America, and they see the globe as something more as what the prize is, and America is kind of in the way for these goals. And so if they can just keep chopping us at the knees, eventually we will fall over, and then they will really be able to put in this kind of economic structure that large Asian nation has, which they've got full control of the people. They don't have to worry about governance per se. They still have a very large economic footprint and all that, but at the same time, they don't have to worry about all the little things and the whims of the populace that are worried about things like, you know, becoming and making more money or having better wages or whatever. So that's my biggest concern. I think that a lot of this is not so much trying to get a big mandate, but more just to destabilize.
No, and it makes sense. And with the destabilization and chaos, you know, you breed compliance. It's kind of how it's always worked, right? You give the people a reason to ask for your help. And, you know, that's one thing that I could say would concern me. And I do want to say, yes, guys, there's new people joining in the chat and stuff. So I appreciate everyone kind of explaining PrepperNow, wearing his mask and stuff like that. But this is an OPSEC situation, not something I require within, you know, thousands of miles of me or whatever it might be. So, but I do want to say, you know, we're at, let's see, 45 minutes. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who's here right now. I do think it's awesome that we have such a good sized crowd here and that we're having great conversations, not just here in the live stream with PrepperNow and myself, but in the comments as well. And I really appreciate all of you interacting with each other and building this community, because that's huge. At the end of the day, we need to keep building the community and we need to keep working together, because the more informed we are, the better we can react to all these things that are happening. One thing I want to bring up that I basically just kind of thought about while you were talking is that we're at that point, we're kind of at that point where a lot of people are just kind of saying no, we're not doing this anymore. We're over it. Things aren't really working out, and we're trying to move on and find ourselves in a different situation. And obviously we're seeing that in other countries right now. But the concern, I guess, would be is that obviously a lot of what's been done over this past year has been in order to increase the level of control and power that is centralized, right? And there's a lot of reasons to believe that, and it's very obvious if you can't see it that way at all. But what I would say is that as they keep trying to squeeze tighter, of course, they're losing more and more people to this concept. And during that process, while these people are being lost to the concept, what is it that would bring those people back into the fold? Because at a certain point, with all of the mainstream media attention and with the government continually putting out new reports and ideas and mandates and everything else, and if things just don't keep working in their favor, they can't keep accomplishing what it is they're trying to push, what it is they might be able to accomplish or willing to do thereafter is really what I'm more concerned about. Because the way to get everybody back into the fold and the way to get everybody back on board with compliance is to prove that there's something more dangerous out there that is worth actually complying for. And if things get desperate to a certain point where enough people are no longer willing to accept the narrative or move forward in a certain way, I have a feeling that there wouldn't be that difficult of a situation for them to let something out there that could actually force people to jump back on ship. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I actually kind of almost mentioned that in my last. And for the record, the only time you'll ever see me wear a mask is when I'm live streaming on YouTube. I don't wear them in the grocery store. I literally it's to the point where I've got like preloaded answers for anyone that'd be like, sir, why aren't you wearing your mask? Trust me, I can't stand wearing it right now. I don't like it. And it is an OPSEC thing for what I do for a living. I don't want to be canceled for the new people. Anyway, I do worry about that. That's why one of the main things I've really focused as of late is getting the power done. My fear is that everything is just going to keep going, and they're not going to get, they are not going to get the desired result. And at that point, you will see something of like a power kind of issue, or, like I was talking to my wife, I was talking about taking some cash out to have it on hand. And she's like, well, just, there's always an ATM, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, well, look at the JBS beef thing. Look at the Colonial Pipeline thing, which did affect us where we are. Things are happening, and it doesn't take much for a hack to come in and completely turn the system on its ear. If they were to take out the internet for a week, it would crash everything. You can't buy and sell. You can't do all kinds of stuff. And so, she ultimately agreed. She's like, all right, yeah, take some. We can, put it in our safe or whatever. But I do fear that the desired, way they want to push people into whatever, avenue they want, it's not going to happen, especially here in America. And at that point, they're going to do whatever the next thing is. And I mean, I really think I had a video called You're at War. I really do believe that. I really think that this is fourth gen kind of stuff going on, and people don't really understand that right now there are a lot of things that are going on that are warlike tactics, but they're very, very subtle. And people don't know that. They don't know that a hack can take out the banking system. And then, if you're not able to buy and sell for a week, most people, if you look when you're in the grocery store, they're not buying a big carton full of food or whatever. They're buying like a 12-pack of eggs and some potatoes and like a little bit of ham for their meal or whatever. And they only get like a few days worth of stuff. They're not preppers. They're not sitting there going over with, seven crates of carrots like I do at Aldi, where I get the looks, whatever, but I don't care. But anyway, no mask. But if there is something that's going on and we're not going to comply and do what they want us to do and what they're able to get away with in, say, like France or Australia, I could totally see some kind of an event happening where it will take out the knees and kind of put the final, blow to us. And at that point, all bets are off. People really will be begging for aid and help and whatever solution they can give us.
Yeah. And it's just like everything else we've seen, provide the solution as well as the problem. It's not hard for them to do. And that is definitely probably the best way. And if I was in charge, if I had to literally get somebody back online with compliance and stuff, I mean, that's probably what I would do. So sometimes you have to think of things from your perspective as to what would you do in order to accomplish this goal, and then understand that a lot of people probably will do that if they're in a leadership position. So let's see here. Got a couple things in the chat. Reckless Reese, do you have a way for your followers to communicate outside of your videos? So as of right now, there's a way to contact me directly through my website. Sometimes I have a hard time getting back to everybody right away, but I do try my best to keep up on it. But I am working on a Discord channel for the public. Right now, I have one that's just for patrons, and that way, there's a way for us to kind of communicate a little bit more closely, and it's easier for me to maintain communication with a few people rather than thousands. But I am going to open up a public server on there as well, so that even if I'm not able to talk to everybody directly, I can at least have a place for us all to get together and chat. So that is something I'll be rolling out here hopefully soon. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because networking right now is huge, and having community and being able to give intel to each other through those kinds of different methods is definitely going to be important down the road here. And let's see, I've got a couple others here. Going to Cry 96 Tears says, PrepperNow or Magic Prepper, where do good patriots from heavy blue areas go and live? Which states, or is it too late? So there's a couple of different ideologies there, and there's something that you have to consider, okay? When I left California, there was a part of me that felt like I was doing the country as a whole like a disservice, right? And I know that sounds ridiculous or even maybe like narcissistic, but what I'm trying to say is, if everyone who is conservative or leans a certain way ideologically leaves a place that does not, then you're only empowering that place to become more of what it is that you left it for. And yes, I mean, am I glad I left California? 100%. I'm in North Dakota, where I have a lot more freedom. I can operate in a way that makes me feel better prepared. But by leaving California, it's one less person to check that box on election day that might have helped sway things in a different direction and maybe change the entire trajectory of a whole state, which is, millions and millions of people. And unfortunately, a lot of those people in the state just aren't educated on how things work in the government system and how things work when it comes to taxes and when it comes to personal liberties and things like that. So it's understandable why it's so easy to sway people in that direction. But by leaving, I left them behind, and now they don't have that one extra person they might have needed to sway things a different way. So that's something first you have to consider, because I feel like it's easy to want to leave because of, what's happening, and you can kind of see the writing on the wall. Like, do I think California is ever going to, go back to being like a Second Amendment friendly state? No, I don't. But what I do think is that if everybody left, it would devolve into more of like a pile of trash than it currently even is. And at that point in time, maybe things would get better because of how bad they get. I don't know. But if you're going to move out of a blue state, if you're going to leave, then basically what I'm going to say is, one, leave the stuff that you left there behind. Don't bring it with you and try to change where you go to into what you used to have. Yeah, are some things maybe something you're interested in? Like, oh, I really like having bike trails back where I used to live. Well, we're not doing bike trails out here in the middle of the country. So stop trying to vote for bike trails and, raise our taxes on a local level because you thought you should have bike trails. Like, those are the things you have to kind of consider and leave behind. And then you need to make sure that where you go to is exactly what it is you're looking for. You don't want to find yourself moving from California to Nevada to try to find a better place when Nevada is just going to be California within the next 10 years, or even less, honestly, with the way things are moving. So these are all considerations you have to make. And I did say recently in a video that maybe on my next live stream, I'd discuss how I got out of California. So really quickly, I'll just let you guys know. The way I got out, and the way I would suggest anyone who's looking to relocate, especially in order to increase your preparedness, is by specifically searching for jobs on Indeed that offered relocation packages. because I was broke. I was living in East Bay area, California. I couldn't afford where I was living any longer, and I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do about it. And I found a great job. They offered to move me. They paid for everything. I literally just had to pack my stuff and leave. And I found myself in a much better state with a much better job, with a much better quality of life. And, it's literally going on those websites like Indeed and just typing in a keyword for relocation. And you'll find jobs all over the country that are offering it. Now, the other thing you have to do is be willing to make that sacrifice. You have to be willing to leave where you are. Yes, you're going to leave behind comforts. You're going to leave behind friends, family. You're going to leave behind, what's familiar to you. But is that worth your ability to be better prepared, or in a place that's going to treat your money more fairly, or not going to invade your privacy, or whatever it might be? That has to be a decision you have to make. And one thing I'll say is that throughout this entire past year, with all the restrictions and all the guidelines and everything else that came into play, where I was living was one of the best places to be in the entire country, because I was still going to work and I was still able to function as a normal person outside of my home. And that is definitely something a lot of people didn't get to experience. So that's just my anecdote right there, my little soapbox speech, I guess, about what I did or how I did it. But that's exactly what I would suggest. And those are my opinions on what you should or shouldn't do in the sense of relocating. All right. And PrepperNow, jump in. I mean, I don't know if you have any experience.
I was going to say, man, because I've relocated too, and I think everything you said was spot on. One of the things that Dave Ramsey said to this nurse was, you need to move from a place of strength. You can't move from like a place of duress. So if you are going to move, do it to a place that you've researched, and like you said, have like a job, have like the ability to get there, and they're going to aid you in that, and aid you with like a place to live and all that. New York Prepper just moved from New York to central Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And the reason why is because, and I congratulate him. I put a little thing in his comments saying, you made a wise decision, and he did. One of the reasons why my wife and I sold our house 2 months ago is because we're in a blue state. We're in Maryland. Our kids did not go back to school. It was absolutely rough. But if you go over the border into Pennsylvania or West Virginia, which isn't, more than an hour away, they were all in school the whole time. And so one of the main things is I told my wife, I said, we can't have another year like this. Why don't we just sell, because we can make good money from it, and stay nimble, because we don't know where all this is going. And at the time, she was kind of questionable. But now when you're seeing the way things are trending again, we're totally happy that we did that. And so, I think voting with your feet is a huge thing. I think if you don't like where you are, and it's easy for a person to say it, if you can't do it, you just can't do it. I get it. I've been broke. I've been homeless too. Thankfully only more for a couple weeks, but still it was enough for me to remember. It's not easy to do it, but if you can do it, I would suggest that you start to make plans and do it now, because if you're in a blue state and you're of a different mindset, you're kind of rewarding bad behavior with your tax dollars.
Yep, 100%. And, one thing that I do want to mention too is that we get people in this community from all sides of ideologies, and it's not just conservative or liberal. It's not just libertarian or Green Party or any of that stuff. We get everybody from everywhere, because regardless of political ideology, people do want to stay alive, and they do want to survive emergencies or disasters of any kind. And I try my best not to put myself into any particular party, just because of the way things have been going over the last decade or so. It feels like there's just one political class at this point, more so than a couple of parties that run the entire system. And I feel like we have a bad habit of alienating good people by just placing them in one camp or the other. And I think that that's obviously part of the plan. And I think that that division is a huge part of how they can try to maintain control. But I think that one thing I will say is that preparedness is a gateway to a lot of other ideas and a lot of other ideologies. And I think that a lot of people become more I guess the only real way to say it, I guess, is conservative in many ways by preparing, because they find that they want to be, left alone. They want to be able to own what they want to own, especially in the sense of being able to protect themselves. They want to be able to own property and have it not overtaxed, or be able to do what they want with their area or whatever it might be. And I think preparation kind of helps push people in a certain direction regardless, just because it kind of just works out that way. So I think, by teaching people preparedness and by trying to get more people prepared for whatever might occur, you're also kind of helping them see the light in the sense of self-reliance and, self-preservation, to the point where they start seeing that their political ideology might not really align with their ability to be prepared. So just something to keep in mind. And that's why I don't try to alienate anybody based on their political beliefs, because at the end of the day, it's all one big system that we all have to deal with. And it's not up to me to tell somebody just because they vote one way or another that they shouldn't be worried about protecting their family during a hurricane. You know what I mean? So that's like the best way for me to say it, I guess. I do want to say we're at an hour. This is my, one of those moments where I like to do a little shameless plug. But honestly, guys, I had a video recently. I did post in the comments and I was like, hey, if you want good coffee, Invader Coffee, right? And I've been working with them for a little bit. But in that comment, I said, hey, if you want to stick it to Black Rifle Coffee Company for all the crap they've been doing lately, then check out Invader Coffee, because they're also American-owned, veteran-operated, and a similar company, but they don't dabble in any of the crap like BRCC does. And a lot of people mistook that comment for me supporting BRCC and kind of gave me the flack for like, hey, guess what they did, or what they are, or whatever they do. So I just wanted to clarify that and let you guys know, like, no, I'm not affiliated with them. I'm affiliated with Invader Coffee, because they specifically told me, like, we don't play that, and we are pro 2A, and we are definitely on your side. And I can appreciate that from a company who's being transparent with me before I ever try to work with somebody. And the only reason I went to go work with somebody was because I was like, I love coffee, and I hate what BRCC has done lately with their little tour of we hate everybody who buys our coffee. So why not find somebody in the sense of capitalism to try to eliminate some of those sales from their pockets, to kind of let them know that people are waking up to their crap. So that's something I did. Just wanted to throw it out there, guys. And I'll just post a little linky-loo here in the chat so you can check it out. But we're at an hour, and it's been a great conversation, and there's a really good crowd here, and a really good group of people that are here just chatting and talking about things and what's happening and current events and possible SHTF scenarios that we have to watch out for. And I would say, I try to keep these live streams to about an hour. So PrepperNow, like, what would you want to leave people with in the sense of what they should be preparing for next, or what they should be looking toward?
I would say at this point, everybody can feel that there is something going on, and this supersedes whatever political situation you believe in or whatever. We're all in the same ship, and if something's going to take the ship down, we're all going down with it. That's why no matter what's going on, you always root for the captain, because we're all in this boat together. I would say right now, the main focus for people would be, I think you would be lying to yourself and not thinking that there's some kind of restrictions that will be coming. I don't know what they're going to look like. It'll be different per state, but I think people should be prepping for that. But the one thing I've really seen, probably the two things I've seen the most in the last 2 weeks, are number one, food shortages, and number two, price inflation. Mm-hmm. And if I were you, it would behoove you to get some kind of food stocked up. You don't have to do a year's worth or anything like that, but I would get it so if there is some kind of a shock to the system, whatever that may look like, whether that's a hack, that's a delivery isn't made, whatever it may be, you can use your imagination. People need to have the ability to not have to worry and rely upon standing in a line to get food or water. And also, stocking up on things is not hoarding, it's preparing. And if you do it right, you can actually save yourself money. And that's one of the things I tell my wife. We do a subscription from a local purveyor of meat, and we were talking about it 6 months ago. She was giving me all kinds of crap. This is so expensive. We shouldn't do this. tonight, literally, as we're having our steak, because Sundays we usually do steak nights, but we did it tonight because we bought a car yesterday. No debt, just bought it outright. And she looked at me and said, "I'm so glad we did this. This is like," because we were looking at the prices in the stores, they're astronomical now. So I would say stock up on food, nothing crazy, but enough to get through some kind of a shock to the system, whatever your level is. And doing that will also help you with inflation, because even today, the CEO of Tyson came out and said, we can't keep up with the prices from things like feed and, energy costs. So the prices are going to keep going up. So I would put some stuff away and I would keep preparing, because I think we all feel that there are some nasty things on the horizon. And by being prepared, you're not going to be a ward of the state. And at the very least, you might be able to help someone else out. You might have, your parents I've got older parents. They might not have thought ahead. I can help them. I can help my brother. I can help, my younger sister. I can help someone else, my neighbor, by being prepared, but also ultimately I'm going to help myself, and I'm not going to be a way on the system.
And I think that's a great piece of advice to leave everybody with, because that's what it's all about, is not being dependent on the system and not being a weight on the system, because at the end of the day, then you don't have to be part of whatever scheme that they're trying to put out there. And, I do want to say next week on Marauder Monday, I will have Jason on here, and it's going to be awesome. And if you don't know who that is, it's the Angry Prepper. So just want you guys to know that it's going to be pretty wild, and we'll definitely have a good conversation. So make sure you guys stop back next week as well. And then I do want to say, obviously with everything that's going on, what we try to do is bring information to the forefront, discuss it, and have intelligent conversation about whether or not there's things that we should be concerned about. And I do think that a lot of people get caught up in some of the outlying scenarios that are occurring out there. But I think the main focus is that while we're aware of these existential threats, and while we're aware of these different, crises that exist, we still have that one main directive, which is just to prepare. And of course, preparing for one large catastrophe or another has a lot of similarities. And that's why you want to make sure you're well-rounded and that you have good focus. And obviously, for anyone who's new to prepping and new to preparedness, make sure you're spending your money and your energy on the right items first. When I say that, what I mean is the things that you need on a daily basis to live. And that's going to be your water, your food, and obviously your power. And then from there, I would probably take a look at how you're going to make sure nobody else can take that from you. And that's just kind of how I look at things. And hopefully soon here, I'll be putting out some information about, like a pie chart of preparedness, basically, give you guys an idea of what amount of energy should be spent in what departments, especially when you're first starting. So that way it's a little bit easier to tackle, because it's very easy to get caught up and spend, hundreds of dollars on a bug out bag setup. And then when there is a power outage in your house, maybe you can charge your phone, but the entire rest of your appliances are no longer able to be powered, and you also don't have any food to eat for the next 4 days. So, those are just the kinds of things that we need to keep reminding people of and keep working with everybody on. But by being more prepared, all these things we talk about, all these concerns that we have about what's happening in the world are diminished. They become smaller and they become less threatening, because at the end of the day, we'll probably be okay. It might not be a good time, but we're going to make it happen either way. So just wanted to bring this to your attention. Guys, I think we're going to start wrapping it up. So I wanted to say thank you guys so much for being here. What a good Marauder Monday. I like having guests on, especially like PrepperNow, where it's all about different perspective, different angles of thought. And when we can talk about different subjects and have different ideas surrounding those subjects, it helps us all make better conclusions. And that's all I try to do. I watch tons and tons of different preparedness channels. There's a lot of good channels that are actually in the chat even right now. And I just try to glean the information I can off of each channel and then apply it to my own thought process. You don't have to agree or believe in every single thing that somebody tells you, but you're going to find nuggets of information or, skills or equipment that you might not have known about before, just by doing that and being diverse in the content you consume. So my suggestion is always try out other creators, always check out other information, and do what you have to do in the sense of developing your own opinion or your own solution to whatever preparedness issues that you're facing. Because if I just followed to the T every single thing other people were telling me to do, I'd either be broke or I wouldn't have enough space for it or whatever it might be, So you have to kind of cater to yourself, but you can use the information that's out there to make the best decision for you. Okay. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up then. Is that going to be it then?
I'm excellent to leave right here. I would just say stack, stock, stick to the plan. Keep your head on the swivel and keep your powder dry.
That's some good advice. I'm not going to argue with you on that. And just so you all are aware, make sure you check out PrepperNow, check out his channel. Like I said, he's one of the ones I watch and listen to because it's a different perspective, and there's a lot of good historical reference to current events that he utilizes from his knowledge base and skill set to kind of share different ideas to about what might be happening. So wanted to let you guys know about that. Thank you guys so much for being here. PrepperNow, if you want to hang for a minute after the stream so we can chat a little bit after. And then as I like to always do, and this just seems to be my thing, I guess, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.
Thank you, everybody.